Putting all the phones on mute though throughout the presentation because of the number of attendees we have. So if you please have a question, if you have a question, please feel free to type them into the chat box. This is usually located at the bottom right part of your screen, or you can access it by hitting the Alt and H at the same time. A little shortcut there. If you'd rather send your questions via email, please do so to info@inovaare.com. That's info@inovaare.com. If you do have questions for us today and we don't have the opportunity to answer them, we will be responding to all the questions via email to all attendees that have a question, or period, all attendees. This webinar will also be posted on our website. So if you needed to reference it later, you'll be able to access it at www.inovaare.com. In addition, we're going to go ahead and have the PowerPoint sent out to all the attendees. So again, we'll make our best to get this information disseminated to everybody as they need. Our topic today is important for a lot of the grievance and appeals leaders, as well as our compliance heads. We'll be going over CMS appeals and grievance reporting, as well as other reporting and dashboard areas and ideas. This is an area that all must focus some of, or a lot of our attention on, to be honest, to make sure that we have the best reporting practices in place. We must ensure timely and accurate reporting to CMS. We need to be mindful of how we are also going to manage the day-to-day appeals and grievances in our organization. And it's important to discuss different reports and dashboards that can help in making that an easier process, maybe not so labor intensive. Specifically, we'll go over the following 5 areas today. We're going to be going over the CMS universes, CMS regulatory reports, executive dashboard, at least hints for some good executive dashboards, operational leadership dashboards, and then the ad hoc reporting abilities that are crucial to an operations. Thankfully today we have someone who has many years of experience in this area. His name is Craig Giangregorio. Craig is a repeat presenter for our Inovaare, at Inovaare for our webinar series. He's spent several years leading operations in both the Medicare and Medicaid areas. He's also spent time assisting several health plans in actually creating their dashboards and reporting tools that they use on a day-to-day basis, including a few of the current 5-star health plans that are out there. He's also been developing dashboards and executive reporting for many years now. So we're happy to have Craig returning to us. Welcome back, Craig.
Thank you, Gabe. Thank you. I'm happy to be back. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir. We can hear you.
Okay, great.
All righty. All right, Craig. I should ask you where you'd like to begin, but since we're focusing on Medicare to start with, why don't we go ahead and start with the CMS universes, if you don't mind?
No, I think that makes sense. Let's go ahead and start in that area.
All righty. We know that the CMS universes are lagging indicators of our health plan's abilities to demonstrate compliance. I mean, it's what we are rated against by CMS. So how should a health plan approach their universe generations?
Well, again, Gabe, thanks. I appreciate the second invite. It's good to be back with you. I think this topic is really critical for leaders, both in compliance and over appeals and grievances. And just for short, I'll be using A&G instead of appeals and grievances. It's easier for me to say.
No worries.
Before we actually, before we generate the universes, I do want to take a step back. I did spend some time managing a health plan over Medicare, Medicaid, spending a lot of time on the reporting side. As you mentioned, spent a lot of time with a lot of 5-star plans as well. And I know this webinar is ultimately about simplifying our CMS reporting and having great dashboards and reports to manage our day-to-day operations. But I wanted to take a step back first, if you don't mind. And I just to really appreciate all the folks that are on the phone, because what the people on the phone do today is very challenging. Setting up their shop to ultimately provide those clean CMS universes isn't easy. I had to do it myself. I have a great appreciation for what they're having to do to get those CMS universes out to CMS accurately and clean. So a few things that I wanted to discuss just off the top is related to what they say, garbage in, garbage out. So there's a lot of ideas and processes that have to be thought through by the leaders on the phone today before you can even get to the universe generation. And so the first one that I wanted to touch on is something that we all know, which is most of the appeals and grievances actually start with a phone call into member services. But the A&G leadership or compliance leaders need to think about maybe what other channels members or the representatives are using to initiate an appeal or grievance. So channels such as emails, maybe web tickets or faxes or mail. These are other channels that members or representatives could potentially use to initiate an appeal or grievance. And so the leaders are going to want to think about those channels and make sure it's a good, member experience, but also that they're capturing all the right data up front. The second area that they're going to want to think about is, as I mentioned, since most of the cases do run through member services, what are the processes around member services that need to be put in place? So, for example, should the member services team just capture the initial information for every case and then ultimately pass that over to the A&G department to ultimately resolve? Or should they resolve the grievances that can be resolved within 24 hours? All other cases get passed to the A&G team. So these are types of questions that they're going to have to wrestle with and think through and set up best practices. Because part of the thing is, all the data that we're capturing has to be right. So one of the key pieces of information that all the initial intaker folks are going to need to capture is that receive date, making sure we capture the right receive date. The third area that I would touch on before we, again, dive into the webinar is the constant training that these folks are having to perform. So, the member services team is doing a lot of work. Appeals and grievances is a very small percentage of that work. So the details that maybe the attention to details that we would see with the appeals and grievance team maybe isn't always there with member services. Again, because 90% of the work is not related to that. So all the constant training practice that's going to be needed to make sure those team members are always up to date with the latest and greatest regulations, with the latest and greatest processes on documentation is going to be ultimately critical for the success of the end result, which is that universe. So I think I want to put all that out there to say that I have a great appreciation and fondness for all those who joined us today, because their job isn't easy. And I think they would agree with me stating that everything really does roll down to them and ultimately into the universes. So, a lot of props go out to the folks that are on the call today because their job isn't easy. I do want to say this too. The nice thing though is that the generating universe is an open book test. We know the required fields, and we actually know the expected data in those fields. Yeah, so the thing though, that may not be true for text fields, and I acknowledge that up front, but a lot of the A&G vendors that I'm seeing are starting to tackle that area as well. So I'll go into that a little bit later.
Well, you're right on several accounts. I mean, their job is difficult, and not only the training, but the retraining that has to take place to make sure that they're capturing the information appropriately. Hey, you know what? That might be an idea for an additional webinar that we can do, another topic.
Yeah, I'll come back a third time if you want to go over best practices for case documentation.
We'll have to talk about that and plan that out then. But why don't we go ahead and get back on topic? What do you think are the important areas to think about in terms of ultimately simplifying the process or simplifying accurate and speedy universe generation?
Yeah, thanks, Gabe. So yeah, let's focus on the area of CMS universes. And I would call out 8 specific areas that they want to focus in on. So again, all the folks that are on the call today, you may have a homegrown A&G system. You may have an A&G system that comes from a vendor. Today are things that I've seen 5-star plans implement. Some of the best A&G systems have out there. And so since the PowerPoint presentation is going to ultimately be in your hands, you can use this as a little bit of a blueprint to maybe leverage that to update or upgrade the current systems that you maybe are using today. So the first area that I would focus in on is universe field identification in the A&G system. This is basically a mapping exercise. And what I've seen is many of the A&G vendors have already done this step. I have seen, though, others haven't done this step. And if you have a homegrown system, then likely the burden of doing this mapping exercise is going to be on you as a leader or possibly even your IT department. And it's important to account for every field that's going to be in the universes. So some of the fields, though, that are more sophisticated, that I've seen that A&G systems have out there, they actually don't even put those fields in the workflows, but they generate the field values based on rules and logic in the workflows. But in those cases, if those A&G systems are doing that, you're just going to want to validate that it's truly the case, that that actually is happening behind the scenes. So some testing is going to be needed in that. So again, that first area is that mapping exercise between your A&G system and what's required in the universe. The second area is going to be if those fields are required in the universe, then you want to make sure your A&G system should make those fields mandatory. And I've seen this even personally when I oversaw a Medicare team. It's not enough that the fields are actually in the workflow, because human error is such that when a representative or a team member could miss filling out that field, they very well might. So therefore, the system should not allow the step in the case or the case itself to be closed until all the required fields values are saved. The next one is very closely coupled with that last one, and that is universe fields should only allow the values allowed in the universe. So a good example of this would be who made the request. This field is a universe field, and you don't want the system to allow user to put anything like Papa John instead of B&R, because there's really no point of allowing values in your workflows during the input process that would not be allowed in the universe itself. And I've seen the fields that work really well in this case would be drop-down fields, because then they could select the exact values that the universe itself requires. And again, as I mentioned before, this isn't going to be helpful for text fields. Text fields have what we call unstructured data. And so some A&G vendors are trying to tackle this by basically reading the text fields, reading all the text that's being documented to determine if the data makes sense based on the case type of the case. So let me give you an example. If an A&G professional is writing in a grievance description and saying something like this, the member called and asked to appeal a denied medical service, then the A&G system is picking up that language and reading it, and it's going to go ahead and prompt the user with a pop-up message saying something like this: "Are you sure this is a grievance and not a Part C pre-service appeal?" This allows the user to assess upfront if they have the wrong case type, thereby eliminating the error upfront.
No, I mean, interesting points. I mean, your Papa John comment, though, made me a little hungry, though, to be honest. It's almost lunchtime. But you do have interesting point. But you do have an interesting point. You know, the potential of a prompt being able to be keyed off of some you know, specific words to help guide a representative is actually quite interesting to keep them on the right path. Sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
Absolutely. Yeah. No. A fourth area that they should, all the folks on the call should evaluate is going to be, does the A&G system that you're using, is it in the required format? So the system, okay, so a good example of this is going to be a smart A&G system is going to know what format the universe needs the data in, right? So because, again, this is an open book test, an example of this would be a date time field. So a lot of us are accustomed to seeing a date time field as month, day, year. And I think it's appropriate to have in the workflow the date time field in that format because we're all used to that. However, the system that you're using, again, whether it's a A&G system from a vendor or a homegrown system, the system then should be smart enough to alternate that format to the format that the universe itself is expecting. And so that's one of those key areas that you're going to want to look at. The fifth area is what I call quality review. And many of the 5-star plans have this quality review process in place before cases are closed. This essentially allows them to ensure every case is audit ready at closure. These health plans do not run around with their head cut off before a CMS audit, making sure every case is clean before it gets sent to the CMS team. They make sure that the cases are audit ready at closure, and that quality review process is going to help with that. What I've also seen is that some of the better A&G systems that are out there on the market today actually already have that quality review process built into the workflow during that case closing step. So you don't have to create all these separate side processes to do that. But the one key piece here that you're going to have to think about is the volume of cases that you receive, because that's going to dictate if you're going to have an auditing team review 100% of those cases before closing, or you're going to need to look at something like a statistically reliable sample size. So that the volume of cases is going to dictate that for you, I believe. The next three areas are really all tied together. And I would say that all three of these areas are going to help simplify the universe generation for leaders. The first of these three areas is what I'm calling self-service. Leaders should be able to generate universes without the need of anyone's help. I found this to be ultra critical, especially during CMS audits, and even in some cases mock audits, because time is of the essence. And we shouldn't have to rely on other departments or other vendors to help us generate those. Now, there are situations that I've been involved myself personally, and I know other health plans have been as well, where you have maybe one of your universes or a couple of your universes generated from another vendor, like a PBM. If you have a PBM, for example, generating your universes, then, or at least a couple of your universes, what you're going to want to do is in your contract with them, you need to specify your turnaround time for those universes for both CMS audits as well as the mock audits you do to prepare you for those CMS audits. You're going to want to make sure your contract states that very loudly and boldly what the turnaround time is that you're going to want for those universes. Next area that you're going to want to think about is the date range. That should be available to you so you can quickly put in your look back period and make sure all the inclusion rules are up to date. So an example could be on the grievances side, right? We know that the report data, it's going to be, we're going to want to make sure that the date range is going to be within those look back periods. So all the inclusion rules are going to need to be there. The second and last area, I should say, is the ability to click one-click universes. So with one click, you should be able to download that universe. The universe should be able to be put in a file format of any kind that you want, but a minimum for the universe generation, it should be giving you the opportunity to put it in Excel, and you should be able to have all the required column headers. The one other best practice I would recommend is to add one additional column for the case numbers. And this is going to help you quickly assess what cases are being requested by the CMS reviewers. And the one thing that you're going to want to do, though, of course, is before you send that CMS universe back to CMS, you're going to want to go ahead and delete that one column related to the case numbers. So, Gabe, if we can, let's go ahead and move to the next slide. And I just want to show some examples to everyone on the call today.
Sure thing.
Okay. Yeah, thanks. So here are some CMS PO universes. This is, again, one look and feel that you can mirror in your system. You'll notice on the upper left-hand corner there, I have standard pre-service reconsideration appeal universe. I have an arrow that points to the from and to dates. You're going to want to have some type of field here where you can quickly, as I mentioned previously, put in the to and from dates for your look back period. And then if you can look down to the bottom left corner, we have the expedited pre-service reconsideration universe. And again, I have highlighted here the who made the request column. You'll notice there's no Papa John value in there anywhere because on the front end, the workflow, we don't allow it. Just the values that we would expect to see in the universe itself. So again, those are two examples that you want to make sure your system is configured accordingly. Gabe, can we go to the next slide? Mm-hmm. On this next slide, you'll see we have several other appeal universes, including universes related to IRE, ALJ MAC, dismissals. But what I wanted to focus in on is that direct member reimbursement universe at the bottom right corner. You'll notice I have a red arrow pointing to the date time field. And you'll notice how in this system pretty much converted it from that month, day, year to this format here that the universe is expecting. So again, that's something that you're going to want your system to do for you so that you don't have to do that yourself. Now, I will say this too. I have seen health plans just in the workflow itself have the date time in this particular format that the universe is requesting. That could also work. Gabe, can we go to the next slide?
Okay.
So here's some grievance universes. These should look familiar to you. Part C, standard, Part C, expedited grievances. We have standard grievances Part D. And you'll notice on the standard one, I have a red arrow pointing to a little drop-down arrow. You're going to want something that looks like that, that's going to allow you to download your universe with one click. and again, in the file format that you want. But again, typically what I've seen for health plans, it's primarily Excel for your universes. And then with that generated universe, you should be able to, again, delete that case number column and then be able to send that out to CMS. So I think that's what I wanted to share on the universes, Gabe.
Ah, well, that's a lot of information on universes and actually quite helpful. What about the regulatory reporting? I mean, I know the universes are important, but there's also the quarterly reports and everything else that takes place.
Yeah, no, that's true. On the regulatory reports, there's several things that I would validate. The first thing I would focus on validating on the regulatory side is the A&G regulatory due date clock. So what I mean by this is the timeframes for expedited, for standard cases, and then you're going to want to look at all your parts, your Part B, your Part C, your Part D. It's really important to make sure all the regulatory due dates are properly calculating. So for example, let's say you receive a standard grievance case on Monday, but it isn't until Friday that you actually receive a valid representative document for that case. So what you're going to want to do is make sure your clock started ticking on Friday and not Monday. So these are the types of testing that you're going to do around these regulatory reports, because again, timeliness is going to be one of the key elements of the Part C D reporting. The second area that I would, and let me just say this on that as well. The report data should be based on, for grievances, for example, when the enrollee or the enrollee representative is notified, either by oral or written, of the grievance decision. So those are some of the rules that you're going to want to focus in on in these reports. The next area is really going to be very similar to the universes. If the field is required in the report, then the A&G system should make those fields mandatory. And I think the good news here is that if you put these best practices in place for universes, those best practices are also going to apply for your regulatory reports. And all your reporting needs for both will be managed accordingly.
So and
then operationally, it's a carryover. And then operationally, the same thing for quality review. This is a best practice process. So by having this in place, you'll be able to review the cases to make sure they are properly classified, such as we know in the Part C and D reporting that we have to classify the dismissed grievances. And you're going to know that through the quality review process. If it was misclassified, maybe it should have been withdrawn versus dismissed. You're going to be able to identify that in the quality review process and then have accurate Part C D reporting because of that. So I'm a big believer in putting the power in the hands of the leaders. And so, again, self-service is going to be critical. Leaders are going to want to generate those Part C and D reports without the need of anyone else's help. They're also going to want to be able to put that date range in. And the data really should be broken out by quarter. And again, those inclusion rules should be accounted for. We know, for example, that these Part C and D reports are due the first Monday of February. So we want to make sure that everything is set up in place for them to be able to generate that. And then last but not least on this one, we want to be able to click and download this into any file format, but the system should definitely allow you to download into a text file, into something like a tab delimited or a comma delimited text file, so that can easily be sent over to and provided to CMS. So Gabe, if we can, let's go ahead and see some examples of these for the folks. Okay, great. So here what we see is, again, these should look familiar to you, the Part C and D appeal reporting. We see the reconsiderations on the left side there for Part C. Again, these are going to be coupled with the org determinations. And then on the right side, we see the Part D, again, coverage determinations, but also the redeterminations. On the redeterminations, you'll see the arrow there. The data is basically broken out by the quarter. And a lot of the, I should mention this up front, a lot of the universes, screenshots I'm showing, and even the dashboards, I'm using dummy data. So the data won't totally align with what you may see in day-to-day life. But what you'll see here is a quarterly breakout and then the totals. And I think that's going to be very helpful for you when you report these regulatory reports. Gabe, can we move to the next slide? So on the grievances, again, there you'll see the year. I have an arrow there for the grievances Part C for the year. So this is what you're going to want to use. So let's say in February of next year, in 2022, you're going to want to select a year of 2021 and then have all the data broken out by those quarters as we see there. And then on the right side for grievances Part D, we see an arrow pointing to that drop down again to be able to download it. So again, that's the kind of functionality that you're going to want to see in your system. Again, whether it be a homegrown or an A&G system, this gives you a nice look and feel how a lot of the other health plans out there are doing it.
All right. So we've gone through the two elements. The first one being the universes, the second one being some of the key regulatory reports that we have that are standard. How about helping out the the hard workers here, the executive team? I mean, I'm an ops guy at heart. So what do you think about some of the key measures we should be taking a look at?
Yeah, so the executives are busy. I mean, I can tell you that they're in meetings all day, every day, right? It doesn't mean that they don't need data though. And what it means is that they're going to want to see two primary things. They want to see the numbers and they want to see if anything's critical. So they really just need no nonsense executive dashboards. And I would outline a few things that they're wanting for their open cases dashboards. And so those are things like they want to see real-time data to quickly assess if there are any urgent matters. That's going to be a given. They're also going to want to be able to have date filters where they can filter any time frame. They're going to want to slice and dice the data with filters. They're going to want to see any open existing cases that they can drill into if needed. And then certainly they're going to want to see the total numbers for all the cases, for all the open cases by the case type. So those are the main things. Let's go ahead and see some examples. So again, here are a couple of good examples of some dashboards for executives. The left side there, we see it's called a case tracker. And this will let you, very similar to what I just mentioned, slice and dice the data a little bit. So you can look at an overall number. Some people call this the COVID-19 dashboard, but it's not a COVID-19 dashboard. You can break it out by the Medicare part to see real quickly with a click, what are all the cases in expedited grievances versus, or grievances versus appeals. You can break it out by process. You can break it out by case category, which is what we see here on the screen. So expedited grievance, post-service, standard appeals, standard grievance. And then you can even break it out by complaint filed by, who initiated it. And then you'll see colors there in terms of blue means the cases are in control. Yellow means I need some attention because maybe they're closing in on that regulatory due date. And then of course, red is non-compliant. And again, as I mentioned before, this is dummy data. So a lot of what I put in here is not being followed through with. So you're going to see a lot more red than you would normally see. But really, the executive should be able to click on any one of these bubbles and go and look at that particular case and see what's going on with it. So again, a very nice, quick way to slice and dice the data for an executive who only has 5 minutes between meetings to look at things. On the right side there, you see an appeals and grievance summary that just gives kind of that total number look and feel that they're going to want to see. So how many total appeals do we have out there? How many grievances? How many do we have for each part? How many for each standard expedited? Maybe they're going to want to look at and see how many were requested by AOR down there at the bottom right corner. So again, this is a nice view for executives to look at kind of the state of, that executive state where everything's at.
All righty. So can we take a chance and drop it down one more level? What about some of the things that the ops or the department should be taking a look at?
Oh, before we get there, Gabe, I just want to show on close. I'm sorry, I didn't get to the close ones yet. So there are a couple of dashboards on the executive. You were on the right slide, actually.
I was right slide, wrong comment.
Yeah, wrong comment. But on the closed ones, they're also going to want some executive dashboards on close, right? So again, they're going to want some date filters for that. They're going to want to have that drill down ability to get down to those compliance numbers. That's ultra critical for them. They're going to want to see individual cases to review it from time to time. Probably not as much as on operational leader, but we need to give them that ability. They're also going to want to see account by breakdown by the Medicare part, and then also how the decisions broken out by Medicare part. So we want to show all that. So Gabe, if we can show kind of that next slide, it'll give some examples of that.
Sure.
Okay, here on the left side, we have closed cases summary. So what I really like about this is it kind of gives you that, a little bit of that decision tree where you can go from the total number of cases that are closed for the A&G department, and then you can break it out by the process, whether it be appeal or grievances. And then you can even break it out further by, well, what Medicare part do I want to look at? And this screenshot we show Part C. and then maybe the category. So maybe this is going to be a standard appeal that we want to look at. If we click onto that, we would see the final decisions for those appeals. And then if we click on any one of those, we'd actually see what cases are compliant or non-compliant, because the leaders are going to want to see that level of detail. On the right side there, we have an executive summary. So this is a nice look as well that I've seen other health plans use. Here we have broken out by B, C, and D, all the different case types. And then at the very bottom there, you can see the different bars that represent the decisions, whether that be approved, denied, partially denied, untimely. And then if the executive leader wants to click on any one of those bars, it'll actually drill it down to a next level where you can actually see the cases related to that. So again, a really nice couple slides for the executive closed cases.
Well, I like how you've gone through and you have kind of like a summary view, and then they have the ability to dive down and get deep into what's going on. I mean, that flexibility that they need so much.
Yeah, I mean, some executives may not go all the way down like
Of
operational leaders will, but I think you cannot, I mean, some executives like the details as well. So I think that functionality needs to be there for them.
All right, absolutely. So now let's talk about the ops guys.
Yeah, the ops guys. Okay, so these guys, you know, these guys are the ones that are actually, they have their sleeves rolled up and they're in it day to day, right? So there's a lot of dashboards that could be really useful for these folks. And I've seen some really good dashboards. I'm going to show them here in a minute that could be really helpful to drive their operations on a day-to-day basis. Without dashboards and reports, it's really difficult for them to have a pulse on what's going on, right? So I want to outline 8 different dashboards that they're going to want to have at their fingertips. The first one being they're going to want to see a dashboard that has an open status for grievances and the open status for appeals. So 2 separate dashboards for that. They're going to want the same for aging cases. So they're going to want to see an open aging cases for appeals, and they're going to want to see a separate dashboard for their grievances, aging grievances. Those are going to be really helpful. It's really helpful also to see on the closed side, maybe your call driver. So what are your top grievance categories? You're going to want to see that, a dashboard related to that. You're going to want to see a dashboard related to maybe quality of care versus quality of service grievances, a little bit of a breakdown around that. And then you're going to also want to see an appeal received timeline or trend line, so you can see when you've received those appeals over time, because there may be cyclical periods of that you're going to want to evaluate. So Gabe, if we can, let's go ahead and jump to, yeah, thank you. So the operational leader dashboard on open cases. This is a really cool view. Again, you're going to see this PowerPoint, you're going to have this handy, so you're going to be able to maybe mirror your system very similar to this. At the very top there, you can see a breakdown for grievances and appeals that break it out by standard or expedited. And then you're also going to see in the middle of the screen, which is I think the most important part of this whole thing, is kind of a breakdown of where the cases are at in the life of the case. So this shows you every step in the case and where the cases are currently at, these open cases. And as an operational leader, this is really helpful because you can see if there's any bottlenecks anywhere. So let's say on the appeal side, we see that cases are at the intake summary, like at the 12 or 1,328 cases are intake summary. So you have to ask yourself as an operational leader, why is that? Why are so many cases there? Do we have enough resources on that? You know, if you have a division of labor and maybe you have half the team closing cases, half the team intaking cases, this is going to give you a good quick view on maybe there's a bottleneck somewhere and something that you need to do about it. So on any one of these bars, you can actually click in it, and on that bar, it's going to show you the cases and the details below, and you're going to see all those cases below for that particular bar. What's nice about that is you can click on any one of those blue links and actually go into the case and see what is actually going on. So again, this is a really nice view for operational leaders. It allows you to assess all the open cases quickly and see where everything's at. Gabe, can we go to the next slide? So on the next slide here, this is going to be helping you on the urgent areas that you're going to need to focus on. So this is the aging operational dashboards. So again, for grievances and appeals, you have a separate one for both. Where you're going to want to look here is that, and again, you're going to see that my overdue cases are a lot. Hopefully you'll see 0 there. But But you're going to want to see those bars that are saying, less than 1 day to close, or less than 3 days to close, less than 5 days to close, because that's really going to give you what are the cases that are most urgent that the team needs to focus their attention on. And so you're going to be able to click into those bars and then again drill down to the cases below to see what cases we're looking at, and then see who owns those cases and see if they need help or if they need to be notified that they need to be working those cases. So some of the best A&G systems out there do two things that help auto manage some of these urgent cases. Number one, those systems have alerts and notifications. So you don't even have to let them know. The alerts and notifications are doing that for these urgent cases. And the second thing that I've seen with some of these best in-class A&G systems is that the grid view or the queue that those A&G professionals are looking at are already auto-sorted. So the most urgent are on top of their queue, and they're working those first. So a lot of those auto management functionality I've seen out there. But if you don't have that, then this is really helpful, especially as an operational leader, to know exactly what cases you need to let them know that they need to work.
And even if they have that automation, I mean, you still need to keep an eye on what's going on and kind of give a hint when somebody's falling behind. So I like
Absolutely.
these boards.
Yeah, so let's go to the next slide, Gabe. So in closed cases, on the left side here, we see the grievance process summary. This is going to be a helpful dashboard. Bottom left corner, the one thing I want to highlight is you have the categorization there for grievances. You'll notice that quality of care is your top call driver. You'll also notice in the middle there, you have your filing methods, oral and written. That's helpful. I think on the right side for appeals, the helpful one is you can see on the bottom right corner, just the level of service. So all the appeals that were requested, what are the services that are being requested? That gives you a little bit of a breakdown of those services. So maybe we can move to the next slide. Yeah. So in the grievance detail here, this gives you a little bit more on the quality of care versus quality of service comparison. So you can see in the middle there at the bottom, all the oral and written cases, how they came in, but you can also see a breakdown of the amount of quality of care versus quality of service cases. And then again, on the right side in the corner there, you can see all the categorization. Again, that could be very helpful for trending purposes. On the appeal side, I like the trend lines that show when we receive the appeals for the different appeal types. And you can kind of see if you have any peak periods that you may want to focus in on from year to year, because maybe there's something cyclical going on there. Again, bottom right corner, you can drill down any one of these cases and look at those. So again, a couple of very nice dashboards for you there.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for those. Again, Craig, a lot of work you've put together in getting this presentation there. So the key dashboards that leaders need to know. I mean, I like the fact that you have, not only the summary version, but actually being able to dive down deep into the what's going on with that. But like you mentioned earlier in the presentation, but sometimes there's times where you need to be able to get reports run on the fly, and they need a way to do that. So what functionalities do you think people should get installed into their products or into their system to get that accomplished?
Yeah, you're right, Gabe. I mean, I've been in there where I needed a report by 3 o'clock. I got a request in the morning by an executive leader, and I needed 3 o'clock that same day. So everyone's in that boat. We're all in that boat together. And I agree, there needs to be a way. So even if we have our CMS universes set up properly, even if we have our regulatory Part C and D reports set up properly, and even if we have the best dashboards for our executive team and our operational leaders, we all know that the world doesn't work that way. Sometimes today I need something new and improved. And so in order to achieve that requirement, we're going to need some what I call ad hoc reporting. And so specifically in that ad hoc reporting, we're going to want some functionality. And this functionality is very similar to what we've already talked about, but you're definitely going to want a date range. You're going to want to be able to quickly identify the date range you're looking for. You're going to want to be able to report on any field that's in your database. So every piece of data that's in your database, you should be able to report on that in an ad hoc way. You also want to filter on any set of values. So a good example of that would be, we talked about that, who made the request? BR made the request. It wasn't a member, it was a beneficiary representative. So what if you want to report on the first of every month that says, I want to see all the cases that were initiated by a BR. I don't want to see the member initiated cases. I want to see just the BR. You should be able to filter just on that value and pull data associated just with those cases. You should also be able to run and save the reports. So you want to save those reports so that you don't have to keep recreating those reports in the future, and you can reuse those at a later date. You're also going to want to have the ability to generate any type of dashboard type, and I'll show those examples to you in a minute. And then you're going to also want to be able to export report to Excel or PDF. Again, if you're using a homegrown system or an A&G system, these different pieces of functionality that you're going to add to it is going to be really helpful for you, I believe. You're going to, again, be able to export to Excel or PDF or any other file type. And then lastly, you're going to want to be able to schedule a report to run at a later date. So maybe you want these reports to run on the 1st of every month or the 15th or the 30th. You're going to want to be able to do that. So Gabe, if we can, let's show a couple examples here of the different dashboard types. So this first one is a really good, nice look and feel of what that initial ad hoc reporting should look like. Ad hoc. I need to be able to say that properly. Ad hoc reporting. And so at the very top there, you have your from and to dates that you're going to be able to put in there. And then you'll notice that there's an area for fields. You can add any field that you want that's in your database. And then on those fields, you can filter whatever values that you want. So specifically, maybe there's a value in particular that you're looking for. You can run it. You can schedule it. You can filter by certain KPIs that you've established. And so you can send it to PDF or Excel, like I mentioned. Let's go ahead and look at a couple of those dashboards, Gabe, if you don't mind. So again, this decision tree type of dashboard is really helpful. You're going to want to be able to use a dashboard similar to this. I think that's going to be helpful as an operational leader. Gabe, can we go to the next one?
Trends.
Like I said before, trend lines are really helpful in kind of seeing where your peak and valleys are. So you're going to want to have this dashboard chart type for you available. Next one. And pie charts are really helpful, especially when you look at percentages. So this one is who made the request. So you can look at quickly and say, okay, how many were based on non-contracted providers or contracted providers, member, the representative, PCP. This gives you, these pie charts really help break that down for you in a nice, easy way to view it. And then last but not least, bar charts. So you can't go wrong with bar charts. Bar charts are really your friend here. This will break down a lot of volumes are really helpful to show, quantity metrics are really helpful to show in those bar charts. You should be able to click on any one of those and actually drill down in the cases. But these are the types of charts I think you're going to want to be able to have at your fingertips. And so, yeah, Gabe, I think that's what I wanted to highlight on the ad hoc reporting side.
All right. Well, thanks, Craig. I mean, you definitely covered a lot of information for us today. We did get a couple questions. I know we're running a little bit long on time, but we did have a couple questions come in, and we have two in particular that are quite interesting. I thought we'd reach out or see if we could answer, if you don't mind.
Sure, no problem.
Sure. The first one was CMS universes. Do you believe that your system should keep the past protocols as well as the current protocols?
Yeah, actually, that's a question. That's something I've gone through and discussed at length with a lot of health plans. So it's my belief that I think a good A&G system will keep the old protocols, but like, as you know, 2021, we have these new protocols for universes. I think they should have both. And what they should allow the leader to do is toggle between the two. So if you want to go, a previous year, you can select that year, and then 2021 have that as well, because there may be health plans that have a need for that. Now, I've also seen health plans that say, I only want the current, the latest and greatest, in which case the A&G vendor should probably just have that available to them. But some health plans have definitely asked for the ability to go back in time and look at previous protocols and have that available to them.
All right, awesome. And the other one, again, is so your reports are interesting. What system has these reports been created with?
Oh, these particular ones? Okay, so Gabe, I did use the Inovaare system. I acknowledge.
Yeah, they look familiar.
The Inovaare system, yeah. I did, in all full transparency, I did use the Inovaare system because it does have all this already out of the box. I've also collected some information that I've shared today from 5-star plans that I've worked with. But yeah, the dashboards themselves actually did come from Inovaare.
Alrighty. So we're at almost 10 to the hour, so we're just a little bit past what we've told everybody we'd go. So we do want to thank everybody for attending today. Excuse me. But it is about all the time we have for today to go through our process here. If you have any questions, please feel free to go ahead and submit those to us. You can submit those to us at info@inovaare.com. We're going to leave the Zoom meeting up a little bit longer. So if you wanted to go ahead and put any additional questions or comments onto the chat, please feel free to do so. We'll keep this up for a little bit so we can respond to those. Again, this presentation will be on our website. If anybody's interested on going to our website to download or take a look at it, and then we'll be sending out the PowerPoint to all the attendees. Other than that, we really appreciate you spending the time with us this morning or this afternoon, and hoping you have a wonderful day. Thank you very much, everybody. And thanks again, Craig, for all your work on this.
No problem. Thanks for the invite, Gabe.
All righty. Take care, guys.